something else in it, and for those of you who haven't heard it, I pray that it blesses you and that it encourages you to thank God even in the struggle, in the middle of it. Yeah? Cool. This piece is entitled The Truth Without Photoshop. Can I just have a tiny bit more? You can probably just the monitor. I will not Photoshop the truth. I will not Photoshop the truth as a means to appease the uncomfortability of truth, truthfully speaking. I will not crop out what others prefer to go unsaid or resize truth for the purposes of fitting in your frame. I will not rotate or flip it so that when you first hear it, it feels less offensive. See, I believe scars are lessons learned, so I won't even fix any blemishes. I won't adjust the contrast to make the message a little bit brighter. And I won't add any special effects so the image looks more like me as opposed to Christ. I see beauty in what you may see as ugly, because Christ somehow saw beauty in me. So I'd much rather shop his photo than Photoshop the truth. But he touched me. Oh, he touched me. And oh, the joy that floods my soul. But then something happened, and now I know he touched me. And then he touched me again. Well, he was supposed to be babysitting. Had never left Cali, but now wasn't even sure what state of mind I was in. What I did know was that I was about 8, going on 9, and I wasn't afforded an opportunity to decline what would be defined as my first sexual encounter. Physical pain was secondary in comparison to how much my mind hurt, that I couldn't erase, that we were already at third base, and I feared what would be forthcoming. I went from studying my 1, 2, 3s to three-way conversations with birds and bees. My thought process became a huge palette of complexities. Child life was no longer as easy as A, B, C. A, B, C. See, I always believed Christ. I didn't ever feel God had inadvertently just knowingly left me. Now, oppressing penetration, quickened rage, Satan thought ugly variations would execute youthful zeal. But see, I wanted to know why. I was searching for a sign. I said I was searching for a sign. Why was this happening to me? Why was I being awakened out of my sleep to watch cartoons? I was a small child, making requests for oral sex, not because I liked it, but because it hurt less. And it sparked a strange curiosity. Every time a sex scene would pop on the TV screen, I would fake sick the next day to go back and watch what my mom didn't allow me to see. See, every issue begins with a small seed. So be careful what you plant in your spirit. Because even though most feel like watching them graphic videos are for your enjoyment alone, please take note, allow me to forewarn that 87% of child molesters admit to trying to imitate something they saw from watching porn. And then he touched me. And this time it was my own father. Now, sexually involved with the second man, all I knew was that I was about 9 going on 10. I was about 9 going on 10. What would make someone want to touch one of their own begot 10? I hyperextended my brain trying to make sense of his intentions. All the while, teachers are saying she doesn't focus, she doesn't pay attention. I was going to every extent I knew. But still I was frightened by what could not be forgotten. I felt used and thrown away like paper cups and plastic utensils at 9 going on 10. He told me to drink this cough syrup, and I tried to explain I wasn't sick, but he kept giving me cough syrup. We attempted to try to get me high after I said no to Jose Cuervo, and as soon as my little brother went to sleep, he told me to come sit on his lap, kept shifting me in very uncomfortable positions, which I was somewhat familiar with because of the first encounter. My heart was beating out of my chest, and the tears began to roll down my eyes. And that night, I slept at the bottom of the stairs, and I went home the next day and I smiled like nothing happened. I said I smiled like nothing happened. Why? Because Satan is a deceiver. One who gives a false impression. Actually had me to believe it had to be something that I had done. Why else would 2 grown men come after me? So I began to change the way I dressed. I started wearing baggy clothes because I figured it would draw less attention. And every Sunday, every single Sunday, I went to church, praying that they would see in my eyes, but I didn't have the courage to verbalize, and yeah, they saw all right. A women's meeting was held, and after service, I was brought to the front of the church as an example of what not to wear. They were so out of touch and so unaware. I just wish for one moment that someone would look past the fact that I was wearing pants and more towards the reason why I didn't want to wear a dress. So I wish for one moment, just someone would look past the fact that I was wearing pants and more towards the reason why I didn't want to wear a dress. And I stood there quietly, but on the inside I was screaming, "Can anyone see that I am hurting? Or shall we continue this debate on denominations and what the women are wearing to their holy convocation?" See, I assumed numbness meant healing. I just had to be delivered. Even though the sight of me, I hated. I took no pride in how I looked because I figured nobody wants somebody that's been molested. That's just nasty on top of complicated. So I took the pain, threw it in the safe, stored it in the back of my mind, and intentionally forgot the combination. Out of sight, out of mind. I mean, they prayed for me with less oil, so I had to be delivered, right? Or at least I figured. But years later, it began to resurface, and I started to experience memory triggers. It became obvious I could no longer put a Band-Aid on a wound that needed surgery. God had to be looking down like, that's not what I allowed the who He created her to be. I created a habit of pretending like things never happened, and I thought I could concoct my own healing remedy as long as I was reading, praying, and fasting. But the wound was infected and began to spread to every area of my life. All because I didn't want to sign the consent form to go under God's knife. I didn't want the surgery. I didn't want to face reality. I didn't want to answer Him. I wanted Him to answer me. What kind of God would allow an innocent child to be molested? Will allow me to share with you one of the most beautifulest, ugliest revelations. The same God who sent His own Son to die on this cross that most would be ungrateful for, and even more would take lightly, and even more would crucify Him again with our actions. And although there was no violence, there was any deceit found in His mouth, it pleased the Lord to bruise Him. And that don't make no sense to us. But His ways are not our ways, and His thoughts are not our thoughts. The glory of Christ is the resurrection, but you can't just skip the cross. You can't skip the suffering or all the souls He came for that were lost. I said, you cannot skip the suffering or all the souls He came for that are lost. There is light at the end of the tunnel. You may not see it, but He sees it clear. But some of us are running haphazardly in the dark due to fears. God has amazing plans for us. We got hang-ups. We hung up on trying to figure out why. Hung up on why us and why not some other child. And hung up on why were we the ones that had to deal with it. And hung up on not being able to forgive. But Christ is the ultimate hang-up. He was hung up for you. He was hung up for me. So enough with the hang-up, because His hang-up reigns supreme. So, to every little girl and every little boy who has ever felt defenseless, to every man and every woman who feels like the enemy is beating them senseless, to every swallowed cry in the middle of the night so that no one would hear, for every face buried in pillows at night to hide the tears, for every throat that the enemy tries to choke with asthmatic breath air, Christ is the breath of life. Let Him be your inhaler. See, some of you wouldn't hear it unless it was from somebody who actually went through. And in that case, He allowed me to stand as a testimony for you and let you know that it was worth it. It was worth every ounce of physical, mental, and spiritual pain. And I would go through it again if you would allow me to come all the way from Cali here to Bermuda to tell you over and over again that you have to let God get glory. Because like Paul, I reckon that the sufferings at this present time are just not worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be revealed in us.